Story 1. My boarding school roommate. This memory comes from my early teens, and even now it leaves a strange heaviness in my stomach. I rarely talk about it, mostly because whenever I do, the discomfort washes over me again. Maybe writing it helps release some of it. I attended a private boarding school in the suburbs, starting in 8th grade, and stayed there for most of high school. My roommate was a boy named Weston. We didn't really bond, we were just placed together, but eventually we learned to coexist. Our room was small, 2 beds, 2 desks, a tiny shared closet. Not long after arriving, Weston handed me a folded sheet of paper, a list of items I supposedly wasn't allowed to bring into the room. It was completely unexpected and, honestly, bizarre. Most of the things made no sense. No frogs. I had no plans to bring frogs anywhere, much less to our dorm. And the strangest rule was no salt. Who bans salt? I wasn't sneaking seasoning in my pockets. It felt unnervingly serious, not like a joke. Weston often whispered to himself at night. Not mumbles, but quiet conversations with no one. It startled me at first, but eventually it became background noise. He also kept a little notebook under his mattress that he guarded fiercely. Curiosity eventually got the best of me. When he was gone, I checked it. Inside were pages with names, many I recognized from school, some crossed out, many not. My own name was there too, unscratched. I couldn't understand the purpose, but something about it felt wrong. I spent weeks panicking that he somehow knew I looked. Then came the night I woke up to find Weston standing over my bed, frozen, smiling, hands slightly raised, like he'd stopped mid-motion. I screamed. He didn't jump, didn't even blink. He just stared and calmly claimed I'd been talking in my sleep, as if that explained why he was looming over me in the dark. The next day, he acted like he had no memory of it. I still don't know if he was pretending or telling the truth. Neither possibility made me feel any safer. Soon after, I found a live snake on my bed. Weston calmly apologized and claimed it was only a joke. When I asked how he got it, he answered, "What do you mean? They're everywhere." And the snake slithered willingly into a jar he opened, like it belonged there. I was 13. I didn't report anything. I was terrified of what he might do if I did. Then things escalated beyond anything explainable. One night I experienced sleep paralysis and saw a dark, writhing mass swirling above the ceiling. It formed a claw-like shape and scratched at my bed frame before violently thrashing around the room. It finally burst through the window, and when I snapped awake, the glass was actually shattered. Furniture was disturbed. Scratches marked my bed frame exactly where I saw the claw drag. I ran to Weston's bed. He was fast asleep, snoring. I shook him, convinced he was faking. He didn't wake. When he finally did minutes later, he looked just as shocked as I felt, until he suddenly accused me of going through his things. We argued. He hissed like an animal and started yelling in some harsh language I'd never heard. An RA arrived. I was moved to an empty room for the night, and the next morning that room's window was mysteriously open. When I returned to my dorm, Weston and all his belongings were gone. The administration said only, "He isn't your concern anymore." I never saw him again. Even as an adult, I still think back to that night. The broken window from inside, the scratches, the time gap where no human could have hidden their actions. I don't know if something supernatural happened, or if Weston was something I can't understand, but whatever it was, it still unsettles me to this day. Story 2. The Thing in My Grandparents' Attic. Every summer, my parents sent me to my grandparents' farm in Pennsylvania. It was quiet, acres of woods and an old house. My cousin Francisco would stay weeks later, so we never visited at the same time. I slept in the attic room, my dad's old childhood space, one window facing the forest. My grandparents always went to bed early, so I stayed in the room quietly, reading or playing games. The second summer, things started happening. One night, I heard soft footsteps climbing the attic stairs, and the doorknob slowly turned. Thinking it was my grandmother checking on me, I shut my flashlight and pretended to sleep. But no footsteps retreated, no door closed. Silence settled in with a weight that made it hard to breathe. Another night, I woke to someone standing at the foot of my bed. I saw their outline, tall, unmoving, and when I shut my eyes and opened them again, they were gone. The closet door was open the next morning. That hadn't been a dream. I knew it. I tried convincing myself it was my grandmother, losing herself in age. It felt like the only explanation that didn't make me panic. Summer after summer, the same events repeated. Footsteps, the door turning, someone watching me as I slept, until I grew old enough that my parents stopped sending me. Years later, at my grandparents' funeral, I talked to Francisco. We barely knew each other, but shared that house, so I told him about the footsteps and figure. He didn't laugh. He stared blankly and said, "That's nothing. It used to touch me." He told me the same figure sat on his bed, pressed fingers against his face, traced his features. It held his wrist sometimes. He kept his eyes closed and stayed frozen until it left. He said the hands were rough. Neither of our grandparents had rough hands. He told his mother back then she didn't believe him and got angry, so he stopped speaking about it. We never discussed it again. Sometimes I wonder which version scares me more. That something supernatural lived in that house, or that someone could have been secretly living there all those years, slipping into our rooms at night. Either way, there's no answer that feels safe. Story 3. The Girl in the Window. When I was 9, our townhouse faced another building so closely that I could see into a room opposite my bedroom. For years, I never saw anyone. Then, one afternoon, a girl around my age appeared in the window, wearing a yellow sweater. She waved. I waved back. Every day after school, she was there at exactly 3:30. We played silent games through the glass, drawings, gestures, pretending we could hear each other.
She never opened her window. She just smiled and pointed to her ear when I tried calling out. When I asked my mom, she said the house belonged to an older couple with no children, maybe a visiting granddaughter. Weeks passed this way, till one night at 2 a.m. I woke to tapping. The girl was at her window, frightened, motioning downward, begging hands pressed together. It scared me, so I hid under my blankets. Days later she returned, but this time she looked desperate. Her breath fogged the glass despite the warm weather. She mouthed, "Help me." A dark stain covered her sweater. I ran to my parents. By the time my dad checked, she was gone. The next day, Mrs. Murphy, the woman who lived there, turned pale when I described the girl. My parents moved my bed and hung heavy curtains and told me no more window games. No one explained why. Years later, my mom told me what Mrs. Murphy had revealed. The previous owner's daughter, Jenna, died in front of the house after school, wearing a yellow sweater. The Murphys tried using that room, but eventually sealed it shut after strange occurrences. I'm 34 now. I live where no window faces another. I still sometimes dream about that girl. She never smiles in the dreams, and she never speaks. The unknown part, who or what I was waving to all those days, sits with me, even now.
Childhood doesn't always protect us from darkness. Sometimes it's the first time we meet it, and those memories linger, not loud like nightmares, but quiet, like whispers in the dark corners of memory.
I can breathe.
Some things really do